basically more to, if you voted for more than 7 in that category, over voting.
My question to you, what happens to that spoiled ballot?
It's not spoiled, but she will not allow it to spoil.
So you're saying now that the voter doesn't have the right to decide in voting for a category, or he's over voting just to spoil it.
He has the right. He has the right.
Let me think. If I want to, why don't I want to spoil my senatorial ballot, but go with my governor, my delegate? You're telling me what happens to my ballot if I overvote?
That is spoiled, but as we've done for the last 25 years, you cannot overvote. You cannot overvote.
But I would like to see whether or not a tabulator could act at a computer and program that.
Yes, you can.
But I'm not saying I like to see it. I just like to see it. I like to see it. But it's not my class.
If I may. Isn't it possible, because I think given that we have this whole situation where we have a gubernatorial election, new machines or whatever, how feasible would it be, and everybody can think about this while they're eating, for the Board of Elections to hire one extra person at each poll to be at the judge's table to explain field any questions or whatever, because no matter what we do, we will never ensure that every voter in the Virgin Islands understands what is on a written piece of paper, because nobody wants to acknowledge we have a lot of people who cannot read. And then we have a lot of Hispanic voters who don't read English well, unless they're accompanied with somebody. So perhaps we can, do something just for this one election that might help in that situation, in addition to whatever we decide. Yeah, somebody that, is only job, so it's not overburdening anybody. But, if we're anticipating we're going to have these problems, no matter what we do to correct it, it's not going to correct it 100%. So I'm just talking about a safeguard, an extra possibility, and I'm only suggesting it as a possibility.
Okay, are we on a half-hour recess to have for lunch?
I understand there's a motion. No? Okay, no, there was a discussion.
Hold on, change.
Oh, okay. No, I was saying during the recess, I was advised by a couple of members they had motions. I understand we were in the middle of a discussion, but is anybody ready to? Mr. Ross?
Madam Chair, are we about to deal with the ballot?
Yeah.
At this time?
Well, that was my understanding. I thought there was going to be a motion after discussion had been. Was there a consensus prior to me getting here that now we're starting with the ballot? Reconvening to start with the ballot.
No, we're in a discussion, but we tabled the discussion to lunch, so we're now starting back with the ballot.
Okay.
As the next agenda.
I'm sorry, my misunderstanding.
You were
Okay. So let's proceed with the ballot.
And the attorney.
That's what we changed it.
Mr. Ross, what's your, what are you doing
Let's start with Democratic Party.
I need to do it. Territorial like that. Territorial and the delegate and the governor. Because the rest is stuff in history.
So we're just dealing with, tell me which one we're dealing with.
The supervisors,
yeah, the gubernatorial and the territorial.
Okay, with respect to the discussion of the ballot, that's where we're starting now. Anyone want to be heard, Ms. Foster, you want to be heard first on this one? Any member have any concerns? Because I'm just looking over it now, so any member who's previously viewed it has, Mr. Roth?
I'm assuming we're dealing with this sample, this actual ballot was in,
Which one are you referring to?
I'm looking at the one that's in court at the moment.
The Democratic Party, St. Croix?
And,
I'm sorry, Mr. Roth, Democratic Party, you said?
Yeah, Democratic Party is in court. And through the chair, to the supervisor, I noticed some wording across the top, symbols and official ballot instructions to be added. Can you explain what that means?
I don't know if I could pick that up.
That's-
It was for the general, so.
That is correct, okay, so, for those, so we don't, that language across the top does not apply to the primary.
I only have the St. Thomas ballot and, that is not there.
Okay, fine, it was on the same court. If I may continue, as we go down the instructions, the first thing says making selection, and then that is translated in Spanish. And I think how that is structured on the ballot is confusing.
Okay, if I may, Mr. Roth, you proposing that be separated?
Well, the heading in Spanish.
Could you read what you're saying, please, Mr. Roth?
Realización de selecciones.
I can't even see. Too smart for me.
Should be separated from making selections and should be placed above the Spanish translation of the English translation above, and there should be a space between them.
Is everybody in agreement with that?
What
Yes.
it's saying, basically, the making selections supposed to be the top of the state, and realización de selecciones belongs after the word race and separated.
Right, a
You know what I'm
line.
saying?
That's correct.
Separated
And
by-
separated by a space.
By a line, let's,
No, that's
well, we have,
You know
a-
what?
excuse me, we have a record, one person, and I'm just making a distinction line and space because you're talking about a whole line as opposed to literally a space, and I'm just doing that for the record, I know exactly what it means. All right, and go ahead, Mr. Ross.
We have consensus on that?
Is there any objection to that? Anybody have a problem or doesn't understand?
I wanted to ask Mr. Ross, through the chair, the word making selection, I think should be bolder and bigger over the middle, and remove the word realización de selección, that should be removed and put over the word bien completamente.
That's correct.
So you said
With a space between English and Spanish.
yeah, but you're making the
Heading bold.
the heading bolder than the space.
That's fine with me. I'm not against making the heading bold and the language. And then as you go down the same instructions,
Okay, before you go to the next thing, is there any objection to that?
No
I don't-
objection.
Or any question or concern, because I
I
don't
don't
want to
have-
confuse it, one person at a time, I don't want to confuse it by going to something else. Go ahead, Mr. Member Mullenhour.
I just want to ask Member Bellato if the Spanish cuts mustard for,
Through the chair,
Member Gallardo.
we have discussed this throughout the demonstrations, the registration that we've had, because people, when they look at that, they're confused and it's too much, the instructions are too long. My concern, and Mr. Ross said we need to put the space, which we have also discussed that, but my concern is the Spanish that have been used, is being used here. Realización, it's something that people are not, they are familiar with, but not in the context of this thing. And then in el crecer, what the hell is that, excuse my language, in the context of this. So I have suggested to Ms. Fox that she gets with someone good in Spanish to go through this and make the language that our people will understand. But some of these words, I myself have problem with.
Okay, and are you volunteering?
No, I'm not volunteering, I have not enough volunteering, I think we should hire a professional.
We got a couple days here, but I'm saying again, what I did is I took the 2010 ballots that had the same Spanish instructor. So this is not the MAC, I know she was talking about the MAC had some words that weren't applicable. So again, now you can know words on here that's not applicable and you take note of it. But again, it's not online and these instructions are not on the MAC. It was taken from our sample ballots that we had the same Spanish instructions and sent forward. So we will correct it, the words that you wanted, and somebody has to do that in 2 days.
So then,
To get it corrected, or give me the interpretation in 2 days. The persons she have recommended in the past, I've called them and I have not gotten them. So now she's giving me another person.
Okay, question, and I'll recognize, 1 second, Mr. Bryan, Member Bryan. Question, is there no one in the office that can do it?
There are certain things, Ms. Felix does some, but again, if it comes to the board and you ask it's not going, the word isn't how she write it, then we'd be doing the same thing.
Well, unless we, and I'm
So I'm
sorry.
saying I took 2010 ballots.
Okay, I hear you. And Mr. Bryan, I'm sorry, indulge me. So you're saying that even if that's the case, if we have a problem with somebody in the office doing it, unless we meet again after you hire somebody, it's going to be the same situation, whether it's somebody in the office or somebody from outside. If it was someone in the office, there would be no cost attached and you wouldn't have to worry about getting them because you're expressing concern about people not showing up. So what is the board's consensus as to how
I have a recommendation.
I'm sorry, 1 second, because Member Bryan wanted to speak first unless he defers.
I want to make sure if there is a word that Member Bellardo understands to mean blackening, because basically that would mean that, or filling in. We have Mr. Raz here, right on the board. If there is a word that he could use in Spanish, other than saying, which says usted debe enegrecer, it means if you mark or you fill in, blacken. So if there's another word to use for that, then it's not what Mr. Neal is asking about. But in the same sense, we need to agree among ourselves. Well, I'm looking for somebody, you got people ready to talk Spanish. Right? So Mr. Ross will translate back and forth from the Rotary. You know the same Spanish you learn around here in school. So why you go someplace to look for a language? Mr. Ross, isn't there another word you would use to make sure that you're blackening or filling in? Which says Mr. David?
I'm not the expert.
I know, but
let me give a shot at it so we can. We say in English you must blacken the oval, right? And the literal translation of that is in negative sense, right? But basically the street translation would be to fill in the oval. Is that a more liberal translation of blackening?
How would you translate it?
Well, I would use, if I may, in English we say blackening, and we understand what that means. In Spanish, if we say fill in the oval in ink or something like that, we could say llenar. Llenar el óvulo completamente en negro. And that would solve your problem, right? Would I agree? Would you agree? Because now I'm describing what blackmail means rather than using it in the set.
Good question. And this is from a non-Spanish speaker, but if you're saying making selection in English, you're not really talking, because you go down and I'm assuming, because again, I don't speak Spanish, that you're saying below in the complete instructions something about blackening the ballot, because I see something about oval down here, completely filling in or whatever.
Well, in the Spanish translation, it uses the word in itself to mean blacken in. Okay?
but
if you're speaking Spanish to someone on the street, you won't say en negresel el óvalo. You will say llenar el óvalo completamente en negro.
Okay, but
Fill in the ovals completely in
I got all of that, but my point was totally different.
No, I'm just using that. It's a cultural.
No, I understand, but what I'm asking is if the language below, that's the complete instructions, has anything in it that we could use as the title, because you're gonna have two different things here, because at the top you're saying in English, making selection, you're not saying black and the old.
No,
No, it's not something else.
Just another portion.
We're already done with that.
We're already past
We're already
that.
done with
I'm
that.
dealing with the second sentence of the English.
Okay, all right.
We're already done.
All
In
right.
English, you say you must blacken in. In Spanish, you can say you must fill in completely in black.
Okay.
In English, you say open.
If you start in Spanish genitive, you put Spanish and say genitive, tell them, any one of them.
Does that,
Llena.
The times that you speak it in,
Usted debe llenar
right.
el óvalo completamente en negro.
Oh,
Y no se haga ninguna marca fuera del óvalo. That solves, that describes exactly what you want the person to do exactly.
Let me ask you a question. Now, we're going to get rid of realización de soluciones, because that's another word that people would not understand.
If you realize you make a mistake.
No, this word.
Yeah, I saw that. The one that you done.
If you don't want to use, if you don't want to use realizaciones, you can say, haga su selección.
okay, question to resolve this, because we're gonna go back. Does anybody on the board have an objection to Member Ross and Member Bellario getting together and doing this language? Because we can't spend the next hour.
Which part are you referring to? Question.
It's all the instructions.
All the instructions and anything, okay, I have a question.
The
I have a
Spanish, the
question.
Spanish segment of it?
Yes.
I have a recommendation. Ms. Fox could contact the supervisor of foreign languages in the Department of Education.
We got to be
Get some assistance from the education department.
But that's funny, that gonna be Dave's Spanish, and the board is
Yeah,
Spanish.
sure.
The lot is saying right now that
How
Dave's
do we know how
Spanish.
Spanish is the good Spanish?
Because I'm a Hispanic here and I
Yeah,
deal with
that's
Puerto
true.
Ricans here and Hispanic.
Anyway.
Two questions, please. Two
First,
questions,
and then-
Two questions.
then
Why are you introduce right now?
Member Robinson, Supervisor, you're not
Two
recognized.
concerns. Two concerns. I assume, I believe that the ballots are, some of us from St. Thomas have St. Thomas district ballot, and St. Croix have St. Croix
You
district
have
ballot.
four. I give everybody everyone.
I don't have St. Croix district. I did. I've been looking through. I don't have it.
He's missing one. but
I don't have
he's
St.
there.
Croix district
Okay.
ballot, but no problem, but listen to this.
Just-
Okay, listen, let me talk, please. Listen. I note on all the ballots, it says primary elections and it had elecciones question.
Exactly,
That's number one. Number one. What's that?
Where you?
On the top of the ballot, United States Virgineros, Estados Unidos.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna stop this. We're gonna do with one section at a time. Remember, Brian, you had a motion related to, wait a second, I'll come back to you. You had a motion.
I was
with
trying to
respect
save
this
some
one.
time, because I want to make a motion that we allow Mr. Rojas and Mr. O'Neill, and we have another member for St. Thomas that will work with them. The workers will speak Spanish, you know Spanish, work together to correct the language, because the Spanish and Rojas and O'Neill and Wilkins on top, and I can tell the same Spanish. Each of us have a different way of expressing the language and the intent that you're speaking to, whether I, you, or
Do I
others.
hear a second?
So that's my motion.
Second. No, everybody done?
Objection?
Oh, yeah, I got you, right.
I still have my question.
Again,
I still have my question as to this ballot. It's on all the sample ballots,
Yeah.
all the sticking. What is this question after elecciones?
It's supposed to be primary, they don't know how to.
Okay, well, is that gonna be put in?
you gotta get it from the group here.
Secondly, these ballots are supposed to be 4 separate ballots. 4. The delegate race is 1 ballot. The gubernatorial and the senatorial is 1 ballot. That's 2. The board of elections is 3. And the party is 4. 4 separate ballots. Is this 4 separate ballots?
Yeah. Primary election.
4 separate ballots. The boards of elections is a separate ballot.
And a different color, but we speak in primary and general election.
Board of election is a separate ballot from the senatorial and the gubernatorial ballot. The delegate race is a federal ballot, is a separate ballot, and the party positions is a separate ballot. On the ballots, they are all merged, especially the parties. If you go down categorize, you have the delegate, you have the governor, then you have the senatorial, then you go to the party, then up top you have another party, then you have the election, then you come back to another party position. The party positions should flow on one, it's supposed to be 1 ballot, and then the election is 1 ballot, the delegate is 1 ballot. That's all I have.
Through the chair, my name is
It could be on this one sheet.
Yes, I don't know if provided it is separate ballots.
Right.
Okay, wait a minute, there's a protocol here. Raise your hand to be recognized. Go ahead.
This ballot, when you say a ballot, you talk about the distinction between the delegate and the candidate, correct? What is that?
I assume so. I don't know how this machine calculates it.
I know, I'm just asking. So then, according to the law, the board of election and board of education have a different color ballot. You have an empty ballot. If you look in the statute,
You don't have the board of education.
I hear that, but I'm saying by law to speak about the board of education, board of election. We don't have election right now. So therefore, under the statute, the election ballot supposed to be of a different color. The only way you can put it on this single paper is to put it on the back with a different color. The companies can make anything they want on a piece of paper. You can have a white in the front and a pink or blue in the back. That's what the statute requires them to be in a different color. If you have that, I told you, look at it, you can show it and tell us what it says, please.
Well, 2 different colors for what? I wasn't sure.
The board of election, board of education.
I see the parties have to be different colors.
Yeah, but the board of election, board of education. Look at something from
Okay, as they're researching that.
I just want to concur with to this, well, they don't, and what they don't say. If you look at what is being proposed here, just using the Sequoia, for example, what I understand them to say is that the party races should be separate. Okay, what you need to do is move the board of elections, probably put that under the Senate, and then put the territorial committees and the state chair under one column. I think that's what his point was. Okay.
The issue with the one with the color though, because I select the color. So that's my question, whether you're going to do it. You're asking me, I'm answering what
I
you want.
understand that, but you still have to say who you are. There's a
Oh,
court
sorry.
order, she's not going to translate every, that now it's Ms. Sparks speaking. Remember,
After each race, there's a writing section, and it appears to me that if the fonts look a little small, it should be the same font. The writing font should be the same font.
good point.
Again,
Remember, one second.
Oh, sorry.
Remember, Watlington, since you were proposing, were you satisfied with the response you received, or something?
Well, I think Ms. Fox said that it would be corrected. My last concern, again, I agree with Mr. Webster about the font. What size font is these ballots going to be? That's number one. What size font? 12, 10, 12, 14, 16, what size font? I think there must be a size font so that people can read it. I mean, this is very difficult to read, that's number one. Number two.
14.
Number two.
If I can interrupt you before, do we know what size this is now? Because that would give us an
I think when they
opportunity.
said it came in at, it might be 10.
Yeah, right, this is
It's 10.
All right.
Because again, they tried to put it on strong paper, but I'm sure all ballots will be the
Along the ballot, right.
11.7.
Okay. Traditionally, and the reason you cast lots is because the numbers are annexed to the names, not the names, not the numbers separated for the names. The place where you're supposed to vote, mark the vote, is supposed to be on the where the numbers are, where the oval is now, the numbers should be, and where the numbers are, the ovals should be. So in the opposite.
Do we have any disagreement on that? Okay. Go ahead. Any further? That's your last
That's it.
concern? But 1 second, because I think it's, you were before, Bert? No. Okay, wait a minute. Member Ryan, Member Williams, and Member Molinar.
To the chair to the lead council, this is Cole. If you look, subsection 463 is from the ballot to the primary. And if you look at 493 for numbers from the ballot, it makes reference to different colors, right?
I have 492.
You don't have 493 there?
493.
So you make the reference to colors?
Sample ballots of town color.
Right. And the primary ballots, the parties are white in the column accordingly, but you still have a different color, which ballots are sample elections of the board.
Okay, can we, if I may, just interject something. Can we take note that at least 493, the last time it was revised or anything that I can see was in 1968, because sometimes when we're talking about these statutes, we're talking about, and it's, the legislature hasn't changed it. I'm not saying we cannot follow the law, but what we're stuck with are laws that relate to when we had paper ballots.
492 was changed.
I'm talking about 493, I didn't look at 492, but 493 references colors. And 493 also references colors. I wasn't looking at 492. And I'm just using it as an example. I'm not trying to start a debate about it. But we have to be conscious of that, because when we're further asking for change, we need to get all this consensus. Supervisor Clark.
Okay, that's my question on the color. Based on the first version from ES&S, they cannot put color on the back. So that means that you don't have to separate those ballots. You'll have this one, and then you'll have to have the color for the board of election.
Wait, no, wait, we're not.
The color, have the color on the back of the same form.
Member Williams,
Okay.
Member Molinar, and
Because
Member
we really gotta be pressing for that. So I think we agree on your point about moving the parties to supervisor session. We're talking color. Can we, you said we can put a different color
Yes,
on the back. So can we, for the purpose of ballot construction, where it speaks to the category of the ballot, can we color that on the front? to delineate that the delegate is black, the governor is red, the legislature is pink, the territorial committees are blue, and the board of elections is green. Just the heading portion of it, where it's black in these portions, can we put those in different colors to show the differentiation in the portions of the ballot? That's the question.
One another consideration, we came up with what presented to you. We were starting out with the color in the party, so the Democrats would be blue. So now you need to give me another color to put that one.
Oh,
I'm just saying that was a recommendation for the deputy, that even though instead of black and white, we put this, so when you pick up a ballot, you know that it's a Republican ballot.
That's a primary?
Yes.
Okay. Even better.
And then you can find another color for the board of election. But I'm just trying to find out if you can keep it on one sheet, or you want to go to another sheet.
What I recommend.
I say it should be separate.
Right. It is what the deputy recommend, that the Democratic Party ballot be blue, and the board of election section be yellow, and for the Republican, make that red, and make the board of elections also yellow. And that will differentiate those two portions of the ballot for the primary.
You speak was
At
primary
the same time, that's
section.
also
Primary.
primary. Does anybody have an objection to that before I
Yes.
speak to, okay, Mr. Molinar, you'll be after the objection. since it's only says.
I think if you look clearly at this color scheme that we're referring to, that refers to the general election, not the primary. The primary election, how, you forget now, is conducted. Remember, you get cards. You get each party person gets a color card according to their party. In other words, I don't know which one is going to be designated, but you have to designate. The Democrats get a card for so that you can know. You get a blue card. That means you have to get that Democratic ballot. Okay, so if you just have a little color, it really matters not for the Board of Election in the primary because these are nominees. It only applies to the general where it mandates that it shall be a separate ballot and it be colored. These people are not being elected now, they are being nominated by the party. So when you get the cards, then that determines what you are, where you go and vote, which ballot you get. So it's not necessarily that you have to have it, even if you turn it back, if you turn it on the other side, it don't have to be colored per se.
Okay, before you make that, I just want to refer members to 18473, which speaks to the primary ballot being on white paper.
Okay,
I know, but I want to give them.
well, my point of clarification to what member Watson was speaking to, again, we're using a whole different voting system. When you use the cards, because you're using a voting machine, and for the monitor to activate the machine, you have to give them a color card so they can know what section of the ballot are. We're no longer doing that, so we don't need a card. So back to my point, the ballot, even if we don't color it, I'm not saying color the whole, it just
You don't need
the
to color any of it. If you listen to what I'm saying, 473, for each primary, the supervisor of elections shall furnish the Board of Elections of each legislative district sample ballots of each party in similar form to the official ballot, printed on white paper.
That's the sample ballots in 472 that says primary ballots of all parties shall be upon colored paper.
And this was reinstated because 472 was repealed in May of 1994. It's a new 472.
We changed that before the
I'm asking if that was repealed, was it reinstated? I'm
No,
asking the
probably not. I
attorney.
have an old book.
So it's repealed. So there is no 472 that y'all keep referring to. That's why we need to listen, everybody.
I think we are listening.
Well, then we would have seen that 472 was repealed and that sample ballots are in white. So let's move on.
But what are we moving on?
We don't need any color in a sample ballot because that's been repealed.
Okay, with the consideration,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
you say we don't need color for the primary election?
According to this book, which was, I don't know when this was printed, it's probably a newer book, and there's been nothing reinstating 472. This book was printed in 1998. 472 was repealed in May 3rd of 1984. 473 speaks to sample ballots right after that. That's still in place, at least, I don't have Lexis here, but at least according to the pocket part, which is the one current for this year. So this is probably a newer book and a newer pocket part. Primary ballots in 473 are sample ballots, and they're talking about it being white. So I don't see any place in the code that now says the real official ballot, and if somebody can find it, show it to me. The real official ballot for the primary has to have that in color.
I stand by my, I stand by my statement. The only issue is to make the distinction between the ballots that the voters receive. Whether it doesn't matter what color you do, you just have to make sure there's two separate ballots, one for the Republicans and one for the Democrats.
Okay.
And that's it.
Before we move on to this topic, if everybody's satisfied that issue has been resolved, Mr. Ross, did you have something on this before I recognize Mr. Molinar?
Well, I recognize that the law has been repealed, but I think that in order to give guidance and direction to the primary election process, we need to have a ballot the way of distinguishing a Democratic Party ballot from a Republican Party ballot and an ICM ballot. And if we're not using color cards, then having some color distinction on the ballot is, well, this should be permissible, but the law is silent.
Right, exactly. I'm not saying we can't do whatever we want, but given that there's no law, we're not mandated to it, and it's not a issue that we necessarily
Motion.
prolong for this thing.
Motion.
Wait 1 second. Was your question related to the color thing or something else?
I was something that member Monaghan was talking about, and I just wanted to ask the supervisor if she knows if the, and I'm quite sure you can, but switching of the oval to the
The number in the oval.
around that could be done.
Put the instructions over here and put the overall over here, right?
The number,
The number where the oval
Yes,
is,
yes,
the
that's
oval
what-
is the
yeah.
number.
That could be
Yes.
switched over.
to bring those in, I move that we, for the primary elections, that we, for the Democratic ballot, that the ballot be colored in blue ink, and for the Republican ballot, to be colored in red. For the section of the ballot that represents the boards of election, that remains in white. So,
Second.
Objection.
State the objection.
We have a sentence repeat.
Okay, can we stop the side comments so she can hear what we're saying? Go ahead.
Making reference to 492, we know it's repeat, but in reality.
Member Monsanto,
the other members,
I just asked that everybody and everybody else heard me. Stop talking so the court reporter
What
can hear.
really happened because the conversation had a whole code. You know, something to be able to report to the appropriate section. So therefore, what is missing, 492, 472 application to repeal, some of the language have been incorporated in 493. So if we follow the statute as about preparation, it makes reference to what is taking place as opposed to 492.
493 deals with the general election.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a sample ballot. The sample ballot must be a true reflection of the official ballot for also the elections.
I
Okay.
understand you, but
All right,
still,
no problem.
that's the issue. Member Williams, you had said motion.
I made my motion.
And I second it.
You seconded.
I second it.
Roll call.
Larry Bachelte, absent. Harry Daniel,
Yes.
Claudia Georges, absent. Lydia Hendricks, absent. Wilma Mansato,
No.
Arturo Watley,
Yes.
Lisa Wells, absent. Liliana Belardo, Dillon. Yes. Adele Brand,
Yeah.
Lisa Harris Moorhead,
Yes.
Roland Molinar,
Yes.
Rupert Ross,
Ms.
Glenn
Monsanto.
Webster,
Yeah.
and Williams, yes.
I'm saying it because it's improper and it's improper for you to speak as well, Ms. Moorhead. Go ahead.
You controlling this meeting. Not the public.
I know, I said it's improper for her to speak as well. I know what I'm controlling.
There are 9 yeas, 1 nay. On the motion.
Inquiry. For the purpose of detention, they have now decided that using this one single piece of paper in different categories, they have different colors for the party. So that will have separate ballot paper. So
One paper.
everything is on here.
For the Democratic. people.
Primary.
Yeah, for the primary.
Right.
The printer will be in blue.
So then, if they do that, and it's a sample in the primary, are we normally develop another ballot for the general election after the primary is finished?
Yes.
So then it must be consistent with the first one you had now.
No, the language is similar. It doesn't
Similar.
say consistent. I mean, as long as, I think as long as the order is the same, that will be all right. If somebody has an issue. Member Watley?
Civilized identity.
I'd like to make a motion, please. I'd like to make a motion that the ballot, the size of the lettering on the ballot be not less than 14 fund.
What is 14 fund?
That's the size of the print of the letter.
What's your question?
If I may, we generally use 12 font. Okay, this would be 12, so it'd be bigger than that.
Provided that you fit on.
Absolutely.
Well, again, it's going to be a longer paper, I believe, so we shouldn't have a problem.
I just want to make sure the record that you know without it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We've heard the objection. Roll call, please.
Which one?
Objection is withdrawn. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Member Ross?
I'd like to go to Republican ballot and make it required.
And
The inquiry has-
I'm sorry, sir, for the record, St. Croix or St. Thomas?
the Sinclair ballot.
Thank you.
And it applies to the St. Thomas also, because I'm talking about territorial committee at large. It says select no more than one, and then there's one candidate listed. It doesn't, the law says that if it's the same amount of candidates for the position to be filled, that the supervisor, that should also to declare the winner.
Yes.
So why is it on the ballot?
Need the rating section?
No, it doesn't.
No, sorry.
I'm sorry, the supervisor is responding.
I'm sorry. Supervisor
First,
Fox.
we had two persons there, but it's an ample one, I have to take it out of the back.
Inquiry again. So then we say that only because there's one, that the general election is not going to have a rating section in case somebody said they want to be a rating section.
In the general election, yes, but not in the primary.
I know, but I just want to make sure that people understand what we're talking about.
So that section comes out for the Republican ballot?
I have a concern.
Please, can we stop with the extra talk and come on?
I think that following with Mr. Ross' inquiry, I think the reason that you have that, and it's not just St. Croix, it is St. Croix and St. Thomas ballot. The reason you have April Newland's name there, it is not for one, it says select not more than one, but then it's a territorial, well, something is wrong because it's a territorial committee at large.
Right.
So if it's a territorial committee at large, it goes by law, and it has to be more than one. So that information in terms of select more than one cannot be right. The territorial committee at large, Member Bellado, am I correct?
Absolutely, I agree with you.
Well, then,
It was 16. It was 16.
Oh, it's supposed to be 16.
So it should stay.
Okay, thank you for
It
the
stays
clarification.
at the 16, thank you.
Any other concerns? I'm sorry, you did raise your concern, Mr. Mulner. Mr. Ross?
I have, I'm into the name section.
On the same ballot,
And the Sinclair ballot,
Republican Party?
the Democrat, I start with mine. I don't know why Junior is not placed next to my name. I have no idea whether that applies to any other candidate. And I'd like to inquire the supervisor whether Paul Arnold Jr. has requested that.
No, Bill Francis is a junior on the same ballot.
His name is there.
Is there?
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, it's there, so.
Let the oversight be missed.
And Molita Smith, there was someone wrote in on this junior, that's going to be added as well for Molita Smith.
Well,
If we're looking at the Democratic Party ballot, Mr. Ross is starting with his name, number 1 for the Board of Elections. He's indicating that junior has been omitted, and I believe the response was it was an oversight. So
I have a question, Chair.
okay, one second.
Information
And then,
is
wait a second, and then he asked if it applied to anybody else, and all I was saying is there's several other juniors on here, but I'm assuming since junior was also written in under the governor and lieutenant governor, that that's going to be changed, and Donna Stork has an initial that's scratched out. I'm assuming these markings were made by the supervisor's office.
We got this back from ES&S last night, I was in court all day, so.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that your writings, go ahead, Member Brian.
Is this a mark out as an A or just?
It's supposed to be A, they have F.
A.
Yeah, they have
Okay.
F, so I should make sure we put it at A, so we go back to ES&S, they know it's at A.
Then the information that is on here for the junior, other than Mr. Ross, that information came from where? To them. We sent it to them when they put it in this file.
Yeah, we send it to them, yeah. But based on what we take out the petition, so if we miss putting the juniors, then we have to make sure we send that.
I was going to make a comment, I don't know how anybody will take it, but I was looking through the petitions and the junior was not, his name was, you know what happened?
We take it to the petition. But we know your name.
No, I know you.
I know.
Junior.
What are the board?
I have junior on my petition.
You didn't have it on one of them.
What's that?
The junior was not on one of them. I was looking through the thing.
I'm there in my own side.
It was a rush here, that's all right.
Yeah, it was a one shot.
Member Watlington. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would like to go
No
to,
rush.
Too much, they go.
Nobody's responding to
I would like to go to the candidate number 9, Paul Arnold Jr., on the Democratic ballot, and inquire whether or not Paulie was part of his,
Say yes, you see. So they talking about
Okay,
something.
one person at a time, the side comments are overbearing.
The question is to me, again, based on his petition, it wasn't on there, but he met a board admin person and asked about it when he had a demonstration, and he is submitting his paperwork to put it on there.
I have a question.
Okay, after.
Since this question is general to all these candidates. We took a vote on May 19th, indicating that the candidates have the right to, in fact, put whatever name they choose on the ballots. Notwithstanding that, the election system.
Correction.
I'm sorry. Yes.
a nickname, not whatever.
We didn't just say nicknames. Any name that they choose, any names that they choose, provided under 200, not nickname. 122 characters. 200, 122. Notwithstanding that, the supervisor's office sent out notices of defect, indicating that their petitions were defective. Based upon what? You see that it says under section 100. Section 100 has nothing to do with how the name appear in the record. Secondly, in order for us to be able to verify what names, at least in the St. Thomas district, because we're going to approve the St. Thomas district ballot, we need to see all those documents, because in fact we need to see what has been submitted and what was the basis of submitting or notifying people of the defect, because there's nothing that says that the supervisor and or the deputies have a right to give a notice of defect when in fact the board, there's nothing that says you can't put whatever name you should decide. And there's nothing that says you have to have a notarized affidavit saying what your legal name is. That's what your notice of defect says. You must submit an affidavit saying what your legal name is that should appear on the ballot. You ever have any of those notice of defects here with you?
Yes,
That you sent out?
I do have some there, but could I clarify my point?
Yes, I'd like to see one. Don't see one. I'd like to see one.
I have them right there.
I want to see the one that was sent to.
I don't have yours, I have St. Croix.
Well, whatever.
Could I respond?
Okay, I want to see the
All
form.
right.
Okay.
If you don't let me
Go
say
ahead.
anything, I would say,
Go ahead.
Ms. Fox, go ahead.
Last month, and going back in the records, back to 2010, which I have a document there, Although the board, I had started the process before the board, and most of the folks that have nicknames are not in the primary. So I did not get to look at those petitions. Some folks have their nickname on the petition, some do not. What I utilize this process is for them to send me a name, affidavit with their name, how they want it to appear, because of what we're doing right now. Any errors on the ballot is my mistake. If you give me a name and you say you want your E before your I, or you don't want your J, then that's you. So I'm saying this notice of defect was going out before I got there, and because I was back and forth, it started before the 19th, and in St. Thomas, you only have one person in the primary with a nickname. The most are the general election. So I'm saying again, based on the records and talking to the former deputy and whoever else, they were given notice of defect. Those candidates have been in office or senators for numerous years. They may not have gotten it every 2 years because like I'm setting up a data, I'm the new supervisor, establishing my documentation to go to court, which we are now, is that maybe next 2 years when John Doe run again already has his notarized letter, I may not need to send another notice of defect. That's why the notice of defect was sent. Most people complied. Some maybe in St. Thomas we haven't got their response, but the Archbishop St. Croix complied. But that's the reason why, because that's what we do right now. Parley Arnold, my want is U before is L, and whatever I put on this ballot is the supervisor election responsibility for errors and correction.
My concern is how do we know what names supposed to appear on these ballots if we don't see any documentation as to what is submitted?
Oh, you can see them. You got them. You said you want to see.
Well, there's a territorial issue that I'm bringing up.
Okay.
Gerard Lord James II. Where is the verification? Where is that? Where does it appear that that's where the petition is? And that's, excuse me?
That's how we wrote his name on his
And but where is it that says Gerard Lord James II?
He signed the affidavit of candidate, and he also.
Where is it?
It's in my office.
Well, how do we? I mean, because somebody wrote in the second and this.
Oh, you're trying to say bring those to you to see.
But I mean, because we have so much errors here. There's so, how we shouldn't be approving something without verification that that is accurate. How do we approve something without verification?
Well, if that would follow that logic, that would so everybody.
Those are our concerns. Those are the people that did right name.
Just what you're saying where there's the correction.
Yeah, you know how we know that that's right. We have to approve it.
Okay. Member Brian? Member Brian? Member Brian?
Sorry.
That's it, I'm recognizing him.
Why we're here with this discussion right now is because past practice causes confusion. That's what we're at right now. If you have a way to check a candidate, the reference has to be checked in the election system to see how the person has their name as a registered voter. When there's a defect in the name that they have in the petition, if you got U before A or A before A, that's a spelling in his name, and the board of election or supervisor will say, look, you have P-U-A and we have a P-A-U-L, Paul Arnold Jr. here. That is what I say they're different in the spelling of your name. But then you come to expand it now to say you want to allow a nickname or any other name that you see fit, providing is not more than 22 letters. When Mr. Williams amended Mr. Ross's motion to the past practice of allowing candidates to use their given name and their nickname. When they're sending these petitions, I think Mrs. Fox was saying, she can't speak now because she wants to document, that people sending the names that they used to before to past practice, and so they comply because the candidate questioning that we agreed on ask the people who pick up petition to put their names on the candidate information sheet as they appear as a voter registration or whatever it is. Some comply, most comply, and some still insist that they got their nickname. And all of us sitting here know that I can't go on a plane with a boarding pass or even make a reservation on the airline, name Boss Brian, and give them my data code. So we splitting up these things, please. We are splitting up these accommodations according to which challenging, and the right thing that should happen when Mrs. Fox sent out a notification to Mr. What's his name again? Mr. Daniel, when he spelled his name as Daniele, that is what you tell him. We don't have no Daniele work on the board, we have a Daniel. That is the defective thing supposed. And then he who wants to give another name that Daniel must challenge the board of election system that, hey, I want to have another name on the ballot, but that don't happen. You have to serve an affidavit. Affidavit is the nation that you give have it notarized. But the board of elections still have his name as Daniel. And that's what we're going to correct.
All right, well,
So
that's your opinion.
That's your opinion.
No, yes it is, and I'm going to tell you why. Because our law is presently silent on what the 22 letters is. The requirement for registration, there's nowhere in the law that says you have to run as you are.
We make reference to names.
Right.
Candidate's name is the name.
Right, okay. And the law is silent on whether or not we can have nicknames or not. Where there are laws in other jurisdictions, and there are many with respect to nicknames, they do ask for an affidavit for the candidate to verify that the use of their name is not some fictitious thing. Like I could say, based on what I'm saying, you might think I could say, and according to our law, you could, that I want to run as Lisa Minnie Mouse Moorhead if that was less than 20. Wait a minute, if that was less than 22 characters. Because our law is silent on it, I could do that. The concern in other jurisdictions is that, and the reason that you let people use nicknames is because you want the constituents to be able to recognize the person that they're voting for as they're commonly known. Our legislature hasn't made a law saying that nicknames are allowed or disallowed. We don't have one.
So the statutory construction in the code makes this clear of the intention of what they want you to put on there. Because
If that was
you
the
have
case, you would have never run as
Madam
Burt. Go ahead. You would have never run as Burt.
But we don't use me example.
No, but
Bird
anybody
is
is not.
a name. Mickey Mouse is a
But it's
character.
not your, but it's not
Madam
your.
If Mickey spelling is
I'm not bending the rule, Mr. Ross. There's no law, you can't have a procedure without a law. You agreed with me in the last
What does the
meeting.
code say?
Mr. Ross.
Madam Chair, again, I'm reading from the law, from the book, 492, which is being proclaimed to represent certain points of view. And I'm looking at the construction of the official ballot as presumably so by the legislature. And it talks about Billy Wilson. It talks about Mickey Morton. It talks about Willie Moore. I don't know whether Ringo is a real name or a nickname. It talks about a Lucy Lamb. It is obvious to me from looking at the legislature's construction of a fictitious ballot that they themselves also recognize the use of non-legal names.
Thank
I
you.
rest my case.
The legal name.
Not properly.
Madam Chair, can we move this forward? I need more to get back to. Exactly.
Because I was discussing the process, how you notify the candidate, as opposed to how you allow them to check.
I'm not
They're
disputing
dictating to the board how they want their name in the ballot.
And that's correct.
And we wouldn't
No,
say
and
so.
I agree with that part of it. Go ahead, Mr. Member Williams.
Are we done? Are we done with that?
I report my inquiry on my nine. That's part of the district ballot, it's the district board, I guess, it is.
All right, thank you, Member Williams.
Are we still remedying other changes on the ballot to be made?
Unless I'm here and
Okay,
is there any other proposed changes on, we're still dealing with the formation of the ballot as we see it, any other corrections?
You tell me the primary ballot.
Correct. All we're dealing with.
Procedurally, Madam Chair, I believe that, so that I can, what we're agreeing on today is what would constitute the overall instructions and the territorial portion of the ballot.
Correct.
And that the two districts will review the district ballots.
That's my understanding, because this board has no jurisdiction over the district ballot.
Except, Madam Chair, the language that was being discussed here between Mr. Ross and Mr. Dean have a deadline to be corrected, so we need to
For both, correct.
find a way to have it corrected before the 17th. So Look at them right here now.
That's about.
What's that?
Then I was
Huh?
gonna say.
17. And almost.
Yes, well, there was a motion,
Right, there was a motion and it was voted on, I mean, we unanimously agreed.
but there was not a date set.
No.
Oh, no, date set, can the two of you coordinate that and get it done within the next couple of days? Remember,
My understanding from the sidebar with the supervisor, we need approval of this entire process on Monday, so that she can be prepared to get the ballots produced and ready for distribution on the 17th of June, in order to comply with the 45-day requirement of the Harbor Act.
correct,
So remember, the order will have to be
you coordinate,
forthwith.
y'all will coordinate that between
Tonight.
yourselves.
As it relates to that.
Okay,
That's not,
Any other
that's
No, I mean, I ain't joking, you know.
that's an option, but I'll discuss it with her.
No, but I mean, the other way than this document, you know.
Now, any other concerns, we're about to bring the form, any other concerns about, oh, wow, come on, guys. People are about to leave. Any other concerns about the territorial portion of this ballot?
Primary.
Primary ballot? No.
Yes.
motion.
Yes, yes.
No, no, motion, motion,
I said for a motion already.
Who?
I said I recognize you for a motion already.
What's the motion?
Yeah, but then you can only room, so.
But you can't even vote.
Yes, I'm saying.
You don't even vote.
Oh, come on, stop playing.
No, no, those are actions. Come back to it. Okay, but then you come and start it again, so wait, man, let's start.
Objection to the territorial ballot, and I said yes. You still push your motion. I said yes.
You come back.
No, again, it's a territorial ballot, okay? If you don't want, then go on.
A motion take precedence.
Can't you, but wait a minute.
I asked.
Just listen to me for a minute if your ego will allow. If the motion, wait a minute, listen, you know procedure better than most people in here. I already recognize him for a motion, you can still make your objection, can you not?
But the motion.
Asked a question, Madam Chair. Is there an objection to anything on the territorial ballot? I said yes. He then said
So
motion.
he said before you
That's
came
not
in-
correct. You want the record to reflect what the process was?
He said motion before you came back in here.
Who,
You want to put it just for that?
anyway, Lisa, you were right.
The motion was made before you come back in here.
Thank you. Go ahead. Member Williams.
Okay, my motion, I purposely waited for us to complete this process because I want to go back to my question before, the discussion that we had before we broke the law, that being of over voting.
Okay, okay. Can we finish with, we're dealing with the ballot though, are we gonna vote on the ballot?
Member Moorhead,
But that-
I specifically asked, I said, I want to go back and I asked you, are we sure that we're done? We sat here, nobody objected, nobody said that. When Member Watley walked in, after you already
I thought
said
your
that.
motion was related to finalizing the ballot, which we have not. I asked if there were any other concerns, and there was a no. I would have then said, I thought you were gonna move that we dispense with the ballot. Until we dispense with the ballot, as we had agreed prior to coming back in here, you would table your discussion. Yes or no?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, motion to dispense of the ballot, to approve the ballot as, with all the corrections that were noted before this adjournment. So move.
Any
Second.
objections?
Objection.
Okay.
I'd like to speak to my objection, please.
Go ahead.
For 1 minute. I believe we are taking a dangerous tack to approve these items without verification as to what is accurate in this territorial ballot. You can approve the form, we can approve the form of the ballot, but the substance, I think you got to make sure that every name is correct and consistent, because once we pass the 17th, nothing changes.
Okay.
Nothing changes. We have not been presented by the
Okay.
supervisor's office, no verification that these things are right.
Okay.
You have things that are written here.
I hear you and I understand you. Now, my question is procedurally, how, if we don't have those in front of us now, when are we going to meet again to vote on
Well, we gotta get him. You can get some verification, but I am not gonna vote on these things unless, based on what has happened, I'm not voting on anybody's name until I see specific verification that this is what they submitted by the affidavits and or the petitions that is the issues at hand right now. Because everybody, like I said, notice of defects went out and people were mandated to submit the names as they want them to appear, and for me to approve them, I want verification. That's all I got to say. And that's only territorial, because remember, we can only, you can't do anything with the district. The district got it right.
Yeah, we already talked about, we
Right.
don't have jurisdiction on that.
Okay, I don't talk in territorial.
Okay, here in Member Watlington's concern, the chair is asking, how would we handle his concern in the time constraints we have? I mean, I don't know that it's proper to vote on this pending any problems with, verification. I mean, we could approve it and say if there was a problem with verification, that whatever is not verified could then be corrected. But wait a second, my concern is without a reconvening of the joint board, how would we affect this in the time frame that we're dealing with?
I'm sure.
Wait a minute.
I have my own person.
Okay, I didn't see you, I'm sorry.
Well, you look to be at the heat time.
I'm sorry, what?
I said you look at me at the heat time.
I thought it was coming out of your mouth, go ahead.
No, but I'm serious because, before Member Watson in the door, we had this conversation about the fact that the supervisor had said she has to have this document to send to ESNS to have it finalized so that she can meet her deadline for the move act. Okay? I hear everything Member Watson is saying, but what are we gonna do? We're gonna reconvene when?
Well, that's what I just asked, and
So that's why, we need to dispose of it. We can't play willy-nilly with it.
okay, there's been a motion, it's been seconded, the objection's been heard.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if Member Watlington knows any discrepancy of a particular candidate or candidate, he should let us know what it is, and we find out. And besides that, just saying so, the young lady there, the two supervisors sitting right there. They could go and come back and tell what you can bring them way up. They don't have St. Thomas ones here. He came from St. Louis, man. You have Mr. Butler here. Someone of these three people, including Mr. Watlington, can tell us which name of the St. Thomas territorial council we have. But they just say we even do not with it. What time are we going to meet collectively so we can vote absentee or by phone to have it corrected? I mean, if we want to tell about one, can someone else hear with it?
Well, I appreciate everybody raising the same concern I raised about how are we gonna get this done?
Move the previous question.
Wait, because from what I see from Member Watlington's concern, the only concerns you would have that would need to be addressed now would be with the names for Donna Short and Maria Smith, am I correct? That's the only challenge.
Madam Chair,
I'm sorry, and James. Yes, Member Ross.
Member Watlington may have 2,000 concerns, but I'm not concerned about that. The law says, right, the supervisor of the election shall prepare the format of the ballot and it shall appear, and it refers big reference to electronic voting machines, but we know that that's no longer in place, in the form prescribed by this chapter and under the direction of the board. Therefore, our basic motion is that we approve the format with the procedural language changes, that we direct the supervisor to prepare the ballot in accordance with the names as duly submitted in the
And is that the
and
motion?
if somebody challenges the way she puts the name, it's her problem, not ours.
Is that your motion?
And that's the motion.
No, I have a motion.
Okay. But it's been seconded, so can we have a roll call, please?
You want to amend the motion?
No,
I made the motion.
there was a motion that we go ahead and approve.
To accept my motion was to accept the ballot with all the changes.
I will move the previous question.
Yes.
Same thing.
Roll call.
Roll call.
No, it's not.
Roll call.
Boshalty, absent. Harry Daniels,
Yes.
George is absent. Leader Hendricks, absent. Wilma Monsanto,
Yes.
Arturo Watlington,
No.
Lisa Wills, absent. Liliana Velardo,
No.
Albert Adelma Brand,
Yeah.
Lisa Harris Moran,
Yes.
Roland Moladar,
Not voting.
Rupert Ross,
Yeah.
Glenn Webster, Separate. Vernon Williams, yes. Madam Chair, 6 yeas, and 2 nays.
Motion
Point
carried.
of information, please.
Member Bryan.
Through the chair to Mrs. Fox and Mrs. Marvell and Mrs. Whitaker. Do you have a copy of this, right, with you?
A copy of what? Oh.
These ballots, territorial primary election. I guess you have it. The names that are here, we speak right now, and who we just took, are those the names that was submitted to the people in ESNS when they gave back this sample? And do you expect to change anything in these there?
Other than I think we talk about it, like junior, or adding the initial or something, and instructions that we talk about changing.
Okay, that's my question. I mean, I just want to make sure that we understand that this is what we have back, was submitted, came back this way. Sir Ross wanted to have the junior and his name, and that's what the ballot we looked at, academy, other than the language of Spanish, from Mr. Neil and Mr. Ross, right? That's what we do?
Yes,
All right.
that's what the motion says. Madam Chair, can I, since we disposed of the ballot,
Yes, you
can I make
may.
my motion now?
Yes, you may.
Okay, I move that, based on the conversation we were having earlier, that the joint boards approve as part of our policy and our procedure to not allow for overvoting on the ballot for the primary or general election, so move.
Second.
Roll call.
Ma-
Point of clarification. I know I asked for a roll call, but point of clarification. Because I came in the middle of this, so you're, the part of the component I'm asking, is part of the component of your motion that still that we have this program so that it won't allow overvoting.
On the
Okay,
yes,
so-
or
Okay, so,
I have an amendment to the motion.
somebody, thank you.
Amendment to the motion is that, excuse me, the information and the instructions to those individuals using voting station should be written on the ballot to prevent them from thinking that it's spoiled or the telegram, because even if you put it in the program, you'll be utilizing a lot of ballots just to go back. So you instruct the ballot, you allow the appropriate language to instruct them what to do, not to overvote, to be put on the head of the ballot. That's my motion.
So your motion is just an
That's a separate
instruction. I think it is a separate motion. I guess, hold on, and we will entertain that. But my question to the mover of the motion was whether or not part of the component, as he had discussed earlier, was that this is some, we have to make ESNS aware of this.
It's a program.
Because in program, so I think it's not just that we don't allow it.
Right.
Trying to get somebody,
Is the programming of the system.
yes, to make that amendment to the motion so it's clear.
Okay.
So
So can I withdraw?
No.
Okay, just.
I just want to make it
amend
clear for the record.
But then you want to amend that portion.
Yes, that's,
You bring it amended.
Okay,
That the information,
go ahead.
that information prevented overvote, consistent goal that it is done through the requirement of the DS200. Not that you just prevent it and don't see it.
No, no.
But
second.
No, wait, wait.
I understand what
Yeah,
you're saying.
wait, but Lisa, we can do that, but what the amendment needs to say is program
yeah,
the voting system. That's what I meant.
right, that's what I'm saying.
So program, but you need to use the word program.
To be programmed in the DS200 event and notify the candidates that utilize the voting station.
You want to, there's been a second, but if you could, Member Williams, if you could read back the motion so that we know that we have it as it was amended. So, you want to read it back, Member?
Don't read it.
Okay. Thank you.
It says the amendment is to place, to program the guest 200, and place instructions on the ballot, so that would prevent overvote.
And there was a second, so can we have a roll call on the amendment, please?
Larry Bushalke? Bushalke, absent. Daniels? Who says so?
We have a quorum. Make use of the quorum.
Claudia Georges, absent. Lydia Hendricks, absent. Marsh Monsanto?
Yes.
Watlington?
No.
Alicia Wells, absent. Liliana Bellato?
Yes.
Edward Bryan?
Yeah.
Lisa Moorhead?
Yes.
Roland Molinar?
Yes.
Robert Ross?
Absent.
Absent. Glenn Webster? Absent. Vernon Williams, yes. 7 yeas, 1 nay.
Motion carries.
That's amended motion.
I'm sorry, the amendment to the motion carries. Roll call on the motion as amended.
Bushalke, absent. Harry Daniels? Yes. Claudia Georges, absent. Lydia Hendricks, absent. Roland Monsanto?
Yes.
Arturo Watlington?
Absent.
Absent. Alicia Wells? Absent. Liliana Bellato?
Yes.
Edward Bryan? Lisa Harris Moorhead?
Yes.
Roland Molinar?
Yes.
Robert Ross? Absent. Glenn Webster? Absent. Vernon Williams, yes. 7 yeas, no nays, 7 absent.
Motion carries.
Madam Chair.
Member Monsanto?
One point of order. It appears that we have a problem at the gate. The motion originally passed with a quorum present, provided we have 3 members from each district.
Right.
Just this vote here passed.
Right.
We don't have 3 members.
And it doesn't matter, there's been no quorum call, we know.
I know, that's what I'm making sure clear.
Yeah, I know. what
Okay,
the
good. So
procedure is.
even though it didn't answer, there was no one account for the quorum.
Right, there was no quorum call. so
The
it's not an
amendment
issue.
goes as passed.
It's passed.
Good.
I said it
So
carried.
I just wanted to make the record clear when you record, because we don't want, so many people say they had no quorum. No one made a quorum call, so as far as the rule of being called, that's
Okay.
it. And if I may, Madam Chair, what's the reason we wanted to bring up that situation? I asked Mr. Alexandre and Mr. Volkins to turn the machines on and show you what we were talking about, so we can understand what we're doing. If you want to, if you don't want to, that's not a
Okay,
problem.
but presently, I was holding for Ms.
Okay,
Monsanto.
sorry.
How do I put this? Madam Chair, to Attorney Salisbury, if you don't mind, Attorney Salisbury, would you share with me or with us what authority does the Chief Acting Chair, Member Lisa Moorhead has to encourage the other board members via email not to allow me to vote, because I am a candidate running for office. Would you tell me what part of the law that she could use to tell me, so write such a thing to the board? I have
First
it.
of all, that's out of order.
Yeah.
I just,
Out of order, but
so
I have it ready to leave and I need to clear the air.
okay, it's out of order, I'm not going to allow it because that did not happen.
I have it in front of me.
You can say whatever you
I
have
have
in
it
front of
here
me.
in
I
an
asked
email.
a question. I
When you
didn't
said
encourage
to the
anybody to
board
do
members that I
anything.
should be allowed to vote
asked
because I am
if
running for
that was
office.
the
How
past
many other
practice.
persons are not running for
I
office?
asked if
What
that
gave
was
you
the
that
past
authority?
practice. I asked what the past practice was. I didn't encourage
past
anybody
practice?
to
What
do
gives you that
anything
authority?
out of order.
And others running for office too.
What is
That's-
this, what is the email we talking
You know,
about?
I'll bring it up for you. I'll bring it up and show you.
Okay.
Yeah, let her show you, come
Are
on.
we going to be able to go to us and to demonstrate what we adopted?
I don't know where we are on the agenda because it wasn't being followed.
It wasn't the agenda? But if they reach a highlighted.
Each of the sections that we talk about, so we don't have the same issues.
Does everybody have a copy of the AG's report in front of them? I've been asked by Supervisor Fox to address the have highlighted sections of the AG's investigative report.
So we finished with action, balance, and permanent.
And I'm not, and I'm sorry, Member Brian, I'm not discounting the possibility of
No, I
doing it, but I understand that there'll be some people leaving, so I'm asking you to deal with it. Member Watlington, so you know, we're now, Supervisor Fox just advised you we're about to go over the AG's investigative report, and we're looking only at the highlighted sections that start on page 2. These, as you are aware, and I'm sure the public's aware of the concerns that were raised after the 2012 election. And the first one discusses the consistency and uniformity in the design and content of paper and electronic ballots are important to ensure voters are not disadvantaged because of the particular method of voting. The paper and electronic ballot should be identical. I mean, that we are complying with that, are we not? So that shouldn't be an issue for 2014. And of course, we're referring to electronic ballots because we used Shoetronic before. I don't know what that's really talking about. And then availability of sample ballots, it continues on the same page. Sample paper ballots were not readily available or distributed to the public in the same manner as sample ballots for the electronic voting booth. The recommendation is that all the ballots to be used in an election with sample watermarked throughout the document be readily available and distributed to the public so that voters can become familiar with the voting instrument before the election. I understand from the supervisor's office this is going to happen. I have a question with respect to the watermark. Are we doing that? Is that something that's absolutely necessary?
I think the board has to make up a plan on that. That's a policy.
I mean, yeah, I'm asking. I'm throwing out first the question to the supervisor. Is that something you entertain? Because we have never talked about a watermark on the ballot.
Well, I asked Dr. ESNS and see if it's applicable to the ballots that we have now. Instead of just putting out Democrats and Republicans making a sample.
This is only a recommendation. This is not a law. The AG is making a recommendation. So what I'm asking whether you had any intention of doing it, and I'm also simultaneously asking the board if it's something they think needs to be done. I personally don't, but Member Watlington?
There have been times, and seemingly it could have happened last time, wherein sample ballots which don't have sample watermark on them can easily be substituted as real ballots. I mean, it's going to be different paper, but I think it's clear that it should be, especially since we're talking 3 different kinds of ballots, sample ballots, test ballots, and live ballots. And I think there must be a distinction. I think it doesn't hurt to put sample on the ballot. I mean, I don't see why it can't be done. Furthermore, I'll tell you this, I seen some this week. I seen ballots for an first day with some done by ES. No, it wasn't done by the state, but sample and all of that.
So was it a watermark or?
A watermark.
I
mean a watermark mean that it just prints it over, right?
You know, send the one sample, feed it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Motion.
But just one question beforehand. with respect to them sending us copies of sample ballots, do they send it by a computer, or how do you get sample ballots? Do they actually?
Right now, they send this one by email, but the goal is to get the computer and they'll ship to us in the next couple of weeks. And the programmers here are gonna be able to program the ballots here.
So then we'll be able to put watermark on it ourselves.
And they could too, they could.
I mean,
Tell them what we
it's
want now.
possible, that's all I want to make sure, so, okay. Motion,
Move that we
comply.
comply or accept the recommendation by AG to place the word sample, quote unquote, as a watermark on the ballots that are going to be used for the electoral review as a sample ballot. So,
Objection.
Objection?
The last time we had some bus, I had seen a walk and then marked stuff right across the thing. Right? So you want a territorial mark?
and the sample ballot.
Well, over here I know we saw sample ballot marks across them.
Yeah,
So
but
are we now saying that they want a uniform territorial watermark
Correct.
on all the ballots in the vote now?
you clarify it, but yes, that's what my motion.
Because they had the ballots where you have something in front.
Okay, there was a
So that's
second.
one is suggestion, not second?
That was my motion. You
to
just
accept the
clarified it further.
recommendation.
Okay, that's
There
one.
was the second roll call.
But we joined objection.
Okay, objections were withdrawn. Hearing no objections, so ordered. The next, samples of both the electronic ballots and the at-poll ballot should be equally available to ensure that voters are not disadvantaged by using a particular voting machine.
So again,
It says
Page two,
samples, I'm sorry, we're still on page 2, because the pages aren't marked, but the second page, it's under page, it says availability of sample ballots. The last
Okay,
two
okay,
lines
okay.
in yellow, samples of both the electronic ballots and the at-poll ballots should be equally available to ensure that voters are not disadvantaged by using a particular voting machine. Supervisor Fox is going to do that, correct?
Yes, but I want to go back to the next one. They also said not only sample, but they will not post it. So we need to make sure sample ballots are posted at the polling site. So we can have listed the last sentence before the yellow, and that's what we're trying to add, and I have my hand up.
Madam Chair? But my only point to that, and there's a lot of information that was in this report that speaks to the district, and it was not constructed, the report was not constructed to reflect what district, because in the Sequoia district, we have our, what I know at my polling place, all the sample ballots were pleased. Now I want to put it on the record, because I wanted to overcome that this is what that I've never used.
And I'm sorry, did everybody understand, because I'm at a loss, Supervisor Fox's comment. Would you repeat it,
Well, it
please?
says right here above it, and they were not posted at the polling sites in the district. So I want to be sure that not only they have sample on them, they need to be posted.
Okay,
For this
can you
meeting-
read the rest of it, and it says in the St. Thomas, St. John district? Thank you.
That's everybody have a copy, but I'm saying we joined here now,
We're leaving it.
and we want to go forward. So I want to make sure that the joint board know that they have to be posted, that's all.
Thank you.
I'm not into the district, but.
Thank you.
I'm
I am the
just
district, I don't
territory,
even give you.
because when the audit comes out, they come out to the
All right,
elected
the next page, it's important that election officials engage in extensive public education before the 2014 election when new voting machines are tabulated to be used. I'm not even going to honor that because we've done more education stuff this year than ever, so I think that's, well, St. Croix has, St. Croix has
I
done.
have a question.
Thomas has done something.
Anyway,
I'm sorry.
is there any way that the joint chairman of the board can communicate to the three public television stations, Channel 12, the local government, Channel 6, and the legislature? Could we get them to more frequently put on screen the footage that I already got from us? We went through the legislature last year, I believe. Is it supporting with even numbers of the Senate staff using the machine? We've been to Channel 12, Mr. Hadley. We're not again, I think sometime Mr. O'Neill supposed to have gone there last night. They're filming these things, but they're not putting them on frequent enough for people to see them, and somebody will put it down and say, too much effect in the morning. If I'm up in the night reading, that's what I see on the street. Ain't much people get that time of the night to see anything. So if we can get a schedule for them.
Over 60,
I hear that. We over 60 is up there, that's all right.
No, it's good. I'm over 60. I'm not knocking it.
So I'm saying, in our thing is the people are asking us when we're gonna show the machines. But we have these things on
Video.
already. All we have to do is show them more frequent enough so people can know scheduling when they're coming out.
Well,
So how can we get the church here to?
I will communicate with Ms. Wells, and I'm sure Member Washington will also communicate with Member Wells that she write a letter, and what the district chairs could do is do the same thing, since it's in your district. I mean, both you and Member Washington did do that with respect to being shown, as well. I'll ask her to do it, but to cover all bases, you could do it as well, and then there are 3 people asking.
4,
Okay, so 4. Right. And then adequate funding of the activities of the election system and the availability of funds at a reasonable time before the election is important so the election officials can effectively perform their duty. Are we supposed to send that to the legislature? You could do about
We are calling for that, and when your package, you'll see that we got primary election fund on
this
that we
year.
have to spread out evenly.
No, you have to.
For
But,
non,
and I take exception to that comment as well, because to the best of my knowledge, I don't know that funding was an issue in the previous election. So I don't know that comment, what gives rise to that comment.
The primary voting was late last year, and then
Yeah.
lawsuit.
they're talking, I think they were addressing the time, because if you remember, we had to go and beg the legislature for the money for the primary.
That should have never even been a fight, come on.
No, but I mean, that's what happened. I mean, if we talk
That's
about.
kind of what I think
Chair.
the point.
Yeah, remember Watlington?
Madam Chair, I've looked at this sheet, this punch list, and it is my understanding, and it was my thought, that the punch list that we went through for the last, the better portion of this meeting and the 90 is as a result of this document.
Okay.
And I don't see why we're going through it now, because half of these things are non-applicable. As I look through them, I mean.
May I ask a question that might be over the
Okay.
supervisor? Because I wasn't here at the last
Okay.
meeting. I'm not doubting what Member Watlington is saying, but do you have any concerns, because I believe it's you who highlight these things, about anything that's not being met that we need to address? Because if not, then we are duplicating our efforts.
Now, what happened is, you have to, at least if you say that you reviewed it and you have it in your minutes, and that you reviewed the AG investigative report. This morning, you looked at policies and procedures that I recommended the last meeting. So I understand what Clinton is saying. It's out there, we already got a second report to the AG saying we have not reviewed the report officially. So you could do a synopsis, because something's going forward, but you needed to talk about what happened in 12, at least the highlights, and just say that we discussed the AG report, we have these procedures and policies we want to put in place, and in writing, a lot of the issues weren't followed, although they were put in place or talked about, they weren't followed. So I'm just saying that's what the highlight is for. So you say you review the AG report, and these are the corrective actions,
Okay, but
So he has a point, you have a point, you
all
can
right,
say.
but addressing my question, is there anything in here that you underline that you think has not been met that is a continuing concern, because otherwise we're duplicating our efforts?
Well,
Because we have, if I may, we have talked about this, and I don't think, and I would just canvass the board members, is there any board member that has not reviewed the AG's opinion?
I look at it, and I also look at some other documents of concern. I don't know what this is highlighted here.
Okay. Well, before we get to those, but can you just, you have, there's no member here who has not on their own reviewed the
Well, let me
AG's
see from me, I don't know.
No, I'm asking if nobody.
I reviewed it.
Okay.
I had some, one of my questions was, after we reviewed it, is the jury board gonna, outside of all the work we've done, are we gonna respond to it, or are we just reviewing it, just so we reviewed it and make corrections? That's my question, because, if we're not responding, we already accepted that. We've made adjustments like, the supervisor highlighted, but I guess it's proper and necessary that we respond one way or the other, as I was saying, that we did review it. We did, make adequate corrections based on that and other things that happened. I mean, with more to say that, let me stop.
Remember what was that?
The question about responding, first of all, I don't feel I have any responsibility to respond to anything that I wasn't a part of. Number one, I was not a part of nothing that happened in 2012. I don't have nothing to respond to with anything that happened or didn't happen. What I find to be a problem, and what I think one of the things need to be addressed that is pointed out here is the participation of members. The participation of members, or in fact, the board, the joint board or the district boards determine how members who are seeking re-election participate in the process as recommended by the Attorney General. I personally see no problems because most things are done publicly. But what I'm understanding from this report is that we either take a position that the people who are seeking re-election for board positions are authorized, are encouraged, or not encouraged to participate in some portions of the election. It doesn't matter to me which way you turn it, left or right, because it's a numbers game. And a lot of times when you don't have members participating, you don't get any action. So I feel that there should, whether we do it now, we do it between now and the general, it is important that we at least adhere and establish some rules, some procedure as to whether you want full participation, we can work over it from later to discuss this.
Madam Chair, it's a simple solution. We have, for the past practice of the past year, governors, delegates of Congress, and senators. They go to work, go to committee meetings, they vote in committee meetings, they vote on bills in the floor, they vote on budgets. They participate in every process as elected official. I don't see restricting nobody who is elected to office and any board from participating, because you're going to take that from a board of education, a board of election, or any other agency. Then the senators should be making all out of vote or nothing. They're elected to me just like anybody in the board of election, the board of education. They campaign, they run for office. There's someone alone in the president of the city right now, right? He's running for delegate of Congress. He's supposed to stay home. No, he's staying home, still up and down. The delegate of Congress is running for governor. She's staying in Washington, she's doing the campaign for governor. So how are we going to try to restrict participation from board members who are also elected according to law? And there's no prohibition in the statute that says that board members or elected members on the education committee, board or election committee can participate. Then you're reducing the required representation from either district. Because if 4 of us are saying seeks office other than being on the board to be Congress or governor or lieutenant governor, then you can't have no joint with me to establish nothing. So we want to try to like a trade because we play it again.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with establishing the party, just recognizing the fact you don't automatically or arbitrarily reduce the participation of member or members because they're seeking another office outside the one that elected. So.
If I may. And I agree with everything you said, and I also think it's unfortunate that nobody was challenged the fact that people who are running outside of people who are elected officials have to take off from their jobs and possibly not get paid.
Continuity of government.
No, I'm saying that people have to, continuity of government, you're telling government workers they have to go home if they're running, if they're not, you know, if they're not
And they should
secretaries
have
or
to.
whatever. And that, to me, I mean, nobody has sought to challenge it, I think that's a problem. But that's a force of a different color. And I agree with what you're saying, but with respect to past practice, which you mentioned, some board members have decided when they were running, like Ms. Wells did, that she wouldn't participate in a vote. But she was, well, I'm just telling you what's happened. And then there have been other members like Dodson James, in terms of the certification of the vote. He was not to read votes. I mean, he would do everything else, but he's not going to read Board of Election tallies because he's running for Board of Election. I'm just telling you what the past practice is, because there is no law, as you state. But past practice has differed based on the individual person and what they decide to do. No, there was no requirement, and there's never been anything expressed that there was. It's just like whether we're going to follow the past practice, we're going to set up any kind of policy, because presently there's no law and there's no policy.
Just using this upcoming election, for example, you look at the ballot, and the Board of Elections, where 3 members are running for re-election. If 3 of us are not participating actively, you got 1, 2, 3 brand new members. You would be the only person to be able to vote. That's unrealistic.
No, and I agree, but Member Watlington, I'll recognize you after Member Monsanto had her hand up.
Well, I don't know whether I should put the chair to Ms. Marks. Or to the board members, I should say. Is there a plan to respond to the Attorney General's investigative report? Will there be a response to it?
There is a question,
If I may, just so I'll recognize both
That's
of
what I
you.
wanted to talk about.
Both of you.
May I explain a little further?
Yes, you may, but I think Ms. Fox,
I would say
supervisor, had already responded. No, you never responded? Okay.
Letters went to all chairs, copy furnished me. In fact, it ain't comfortable, went to the chair, and I was a copy furnished.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Go ahead, Ms. Monsanto.
Ms. Fox,
and then
in the meetings before previously has indicated that she has done a lot of the things that were recommended that should be done, and she did her best to that end. But then there came the report that 3,000 ballots were missing. That is, grossly that's gross, that's unheard of. And we as a board should be addressing, because that contributes to criminal rating, you should say. 3,000 ballots, perhaps even more. We talk about the breach of security. We are talking again once more about using boxes with locks to put ballots into. And those in the 2012 election were breached. Police were called when they were thrown out on the floor. The investigative team came and we were told, that there were only so many ballots, and when Mr. McCall came in, he was given another amount. Such confusion and chaos. And I'm saying that I believe that the board should, come to its right mind and make a response to the Attorney General and ask him, this should be further investigated. He hasn't touched it, and the board needs to move for an investigation into what happened. Yes, it's history, we talk about that. We don't want to repeat, God forbid, in 2014, but we can't just sweep this under the rug because it spells criminal activity, as far as I'm concerned. And leave that there.
I know you were next. Member Watlington and then Member Molinor.
Again, it's funny to hear Member Monsanto talking about what happened in 2012. And she talks about 2012 as if she was not a board member. She was a sitting board member who had the duty to make sure that things run right in the district. And she negated her responsibility, totally disregarded her responsibility. And to hear the conversation in 2014, somebody talking about 2012, when they had that responsibility to oversee the election, didn't do anything, participated in the election, didn't do anything, and just casting aspersions and aspersions and aspersions. I think Member Monsanto is a very good candidate to respond to the Attorney General and tell the Attorney General what she did, what she didn't do, and how she's going to fix it, because she is one of the people who was responsible for 2012. And all I'm saying again is whether, if in fact, one of the things the Attorney General wants us to do is to say, we believe that those of us who are seeking re-election and who's on the ballot can participate in activity A, B, C, D, E, and F, if that's what we decide as a majority, or if we decide that we shouldn't be participating in reading the votes, or tallying the votes, or overseeing the counts, then so be it. But that's all I have to say about the report in that regard.
I give a response.
And that's all I have to say. I don't know if we're taking any, I don't believe we're taking any more votes, so I don't think.
May I give a response?
You wait until he's finished and let me address you. Wait a minute. Hello, Ms. Monsanto, briefly, because I thought you had to leave at 2. But
No, I changed. I went to Mr. Williams. Before he leaves, let me let you all know that I recuse myself from any activity having to do with the election. After a certain time, I recuse myself because what I was seeing happening, the words that were thrown, I didn't appreciate that. And I recuse myself. I refuse to certify. I was almost choked to death because I didn't certify an election that was certified out of sight. Out of sight. A certification of an election.
Before Member Watlington, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second, Member Watlington.
Don't let me go.
Okay, wait a minute, just calm down for a minute and let me put something on the record before he leaves. Member Watlington is leaving because he has to leave, but I had asked him to stay at 5 because I was supposed to leave at 3. So as he leaves, you understand we have an issue.
Well, I think that the issue that we have already voted on everything that we needed to vote on.
Yeah, and I
So that's why.
agree
We don't have anything
but
other issues to vote
I just want the board to understand what we're doing now.
And I changed my reservation just to make sure that we stay here and accomplish all the policies. I changed. And I could have been gone myself. Okay? Just to make sure that the policies that Ms. Fox is presenting or the board is presenting, that we deal with these issues so we can have an upright, transparent 2014 election. But 2012 election, if you have the same criminal minds operating the 2014 election, you're going to have the same criminal problems. And I see it, don't say anything yet, Mr. Williams.
I'm not
I see it being orchestrated here today. Mr. Watlington knows what he is doing. They know what they're doing, and I'm keeping an eye, and I pray to God every person running for office would keep. Ms. Fox is trying her best. Ms. Fox, this is not anything to do. Okay, please, in no way. I think you're trying your best. Okay, you're trying your very best. But I see a plan and a scheme here to have the same thing happen. Okay, if they could pull a wool over your eye, they will pull. They know who they want in, they know who they want out. You have a member of the board, Mr. Bushalter, never come to a joint meeting, has taken a vow that he will never attend a joint meeting, and he is running for a seat in the legislature.
All right.
Okay? And then I get a message from you on my email saying, you telling me, they should not allow me to go. They should not allow me to go. You want to call that up, but you did it. It's here.
Okay.
It's here. A corrupt board that we have operating
We're
with.
so corrupt, you're welcome
You
to
know, a
leave.
corrupt board.
Okay, if you're so, we're so corrupt, you're more than welcome to leave. And the fine is,
No, you're out of place. You're out of place. Who are you? Who are you to do that? That's why I asked the attorney.
I asked a question, I did not
Ask what question? The rule, out of place.
and you're a liar. Go ahead.
Question. Liar, see here. It's in black and white.
Go ahead.
Everyone who wants to read it can see it. I shouldn't be allowed to vote for someone person to the
Go
Senate.
ahead.
Madam Chairman, I take exception to some of the word from Member Monsanto because I'm a new member. Roland is a new member, Webster's a new member. We were not in previous board, so she cannot make a general statement that.
You could take that section you want. I am talking about a district. I don't work and serve in your district.
Madam Chair,
I wanted to say that
Member Molinar has had his hand up for the longest time.
if you were saying a joint
Why is Ms. Monsanto?
You were saying a joint, I'm just saying, that the district of St. Croix wanted to respond to this report, we will respond to it on our own. Let them work that out and, sit down and leave we.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call, any objections? None.
Okay.